Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here, back with another TV log, but not just any TV log. I am back with a TV log of the second to last episode of Gravity Falls, Weirdmageddon Part 2. What did I think of this episode? I was pretty disappointed, to be honest. I don't think the episode was downright awful, but I don't think it was very good, and especially not as the second to last episode of Gravity Falls. And I think the biggest problem in terms of it being a part of the big finale, the biggest problem is that it doesn't really do anything to push the story forward. And it doesn't really do anything to reveal stuff to us that we didn't know. It frees Mabel from the bubble, and it shows us that Bill himself is in an even bigger bubble around Gravity Falls. Those are pretty much the only two story points, that kind of move the story forward. And I mean, it was a big deal saving Mabel, but like, that's pretty much all that happened. We didn't get, any revelation of Dipper's name. We didn't get, any indication of like their parents or like anything, any of the real kind of lingering questions about the show. We may never see the parents, we may never know Dipper's real name or anything like that, but it would have been cool to kind of throw some of that stuff in there. As being one of the last episodes, we don't really learn much about the characters here. I mean, to its credit, it does show tons of cameos, from Mabel's '80s friends in the Dreamscapers episode to the things she sees when she's tripping out on the Fun Dip stuff, to Ducktective, all sorts of fantasy stuff show up in Mabel's bubble, and that stuff is really cool, but it doesn't really help the problems that it has. And I mean, those are just the problems this kind of has as one of the last episodes. But in terms of just the story itself, it felt super rushed. Like Dipper was able to convince Mabel really fast. Like the court, it just kind of was like, hey, here's all this evidence as to why reality is bad, and then Dipper's like, okay, well, what about those two? What about the fact that those two stories that they told just so happen to have happy endings? What about the fact that, oh, by the way, Mabel, I'm just gonna give in to what you want and say I'm not gonna go with Ford, and then that's just all it takes to sway her. And Dipper's whole kind of spiel about you don't actually want to be here. They don't really sell us on that point of that she doesn't actually want to be here. Like, it turns out she doesn't actually want to be there, but like they don't really explain why she likes reality a lot better. Considering earlier in the episode she was pretty ready to replace Dipper with a fake Dipper. And in general, Mabel seemed very like non-concerned about things. Um, I don't know. This episode didn't really do a lot in terms of making Mabel likable. A lot of people don't like Mabel, especially after her kind of being very instrumental in starting Weirdmageddon. And then after this, where she just doesn't really seem concerned for her friends or anyone, and then she kind of basically pouts until Dipper gives in to her ways and says, "All right, fine, I'll go to high school with you and everything." And to the credit of the writing, later on, Mabel does say, "Oh, by the way, if you want to go off with um, Ford, you can go off with him. I won't hold it against you." But the fact that up until that point, during the courtroom scene, it really does kind of seem like all Dipper just gave in to what she wanted instead of doing what was right for him. And I don't know, it might turn out that what's right for Dipper is that just to have a relatively normal life, to not follow after Ford's footsteps, because Ford's path isn't a very happy one per se. I mean, he's having fun hunting stuff, but he was trapped in a portal for X amount of years, X amount of decades, excuse me. Um, but even still, it kind of feels like it felt like such an easy answer of just, I don't need to go with Ford, whatever. And just like, reality has happy moments, Mabel. Just let's just go with that. It almost felt too good to be true, right? Like at the end when Dipper was pointing out that those memories had happy endings. That felt like not reality. That felt like fantasy. That felt like is this like some sort of Inception thing right now where like this courtroom case isn't actually happening, or like this isn't the real, not Inception, but this isn't the real Dipper giving this pitch. It's actually like fake Dipper from Mabel's, what Mabel wants to happen. Mabel wants Dipper to be able to convince her or something like crazy. But no, there wasn't anything like that. And I think just from a conceptual angle, just having this world be just of super Mabel happy fun time isn't as interesting of an idea as they could have gone with. Everyone was kind of expecting it to be like, this fake reality that was convincingly real, where Dipper was going to run in and Mabel was going to see two Dippers, and the one Dipper is going to be kind to her and like giving her everything she wants, and the other Dippers are going to be the real Dipper. I thought that was a better concept, but I mean that could just be a case of me hyping myself up for one idea and then kind of being disappointed when I get the other one. But I don't know, just something about that idea seems like it would be more interesting than what we got. Again, I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think it's it just kind of felt very very easy, very obvious, very, here's Mabel's dream world of what everything exactly as Mabel would want it to be. Oh, but Mabel, this isn't reality. Oh, you know what? You're right, Dipper. Let's escape. Like that's just kind of like how it felt when. I mean, it's kind of funny that you go into this bubble, and to be quite honest, the Weirdmageddon going on. Not that that's reality, but that Weirdmageddon seems a lot more interesting than what's happening inside of this fantasy bubble. Like, you would think the fantasy bubble would be more interesting, but no, it's what's going on outside it. And my theories proved incorrect. It wasn't Bill wasn't using Mabel for any power source, and I mean it was kind of a time bubble, but not in that traditional sense. Yeah, but the episode had tons of cameos, and one of the coolest callbacks was with Wendy, the fake Wendy, how she winked instead of giving him the signal, which is just a really cool callback to a really cool moment from, like my favorite episode, Into the Bunker, one of my favorites. But even that, like even fake Wendy was kind of obvious. And felt like it happened super fast. Like, they could have done a better job of convincing me that this was the real Wendy. Also, hey, Seuss, if you're hungry, how about you eat that slice of pizza that's infinite? Just a thought. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. It's like you present us with Grunkle Stan at the end with all these characters, the manly Minotaur and the the multi-bear and the guy who married the woodpecker. That would have been more interesting than Mabel and her bubble. I feel like, yeah. Also, I don't know. The show kind of hasn't really, like, I know it was important to rescue Mabel, just because it's Mabel. But the show didn't really give much of a reason as to why Mabel is like crucial. I mean, Wendy's like, oh, when the two of you together, there's nothing you can't do. But, like, honestly, I don't know, what does Mabel really do for Dipper in terms of, like, being able to save the day? What skills does Mabel have in order to combat this? I mean, she's weird herself, yes, that's, I guess, useful in fighting a Weirdmageddon, but, like, I don't know, for something that took an entire episode out of this big finale, I feel like there were more important things they could have been doing. But yeah, I mean, that's just my ramblings. I did enjoy the episode. I don't think it's a bad episode. I think it was rather disappointing and rather uninteresting compared to like a lot of other things it could have been, and it felt a little rushed, and it just definitely didn't live up to how awesome Weirdmageddon Part 1 is, and hopefully Weirdmageddon Part 3 will be awesome as well. But I feel like I feel like if they had cut this part out, if Mabel wasn't stuck in this bubble, and they spent like or a few minutes just finding Mabel inside the wreckage of the Weirdmageddon, that could have led the way to something more interesting than this. But yeah, I mean, and there's some good jokes in there too. Also, how was Waddles in her bubble with her? When Bill trapped her, Waddles wasn't there. So why was the Waddles in the fantasy world the real Waddles, and how were the two guys at the end able to escape? I mean, I know that was a joke, but like how? All right. Well, I've kind of rambled enough. Let me know what you guys thought. I'd be interested in hearing from someone who really loved the episode, or if anyone else is kind of like me and not, not super convinced that this was the best thing they should have done for their second to last episode. With that, Pie Guy Rules out.